Okay. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Uh, Some people are trickling in, but kind of have a lot to talk about today. Okay, so welcome everybody to the NPHL Lab Advisory Meeting for September 8th, 2025. Um, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it with respiratory season right around the corner. We thought it would be timely to have Derek Julian with the Nebraska DHHS talk about preparations for the respiratory season, and then we've got Amy Roden at the lab here at NPHL who will talk about preparations and specimens for NPHL. So, Derek, I see you're here. Do you need to share?
Yeah, if I could, I'll go ahead and share some slides I threw together.
Let me find my. There you
Okay. Oops. All right. So good afternoon slash morning to those out west. So I'm just going to pull up my slides here. I don't know why they're not showing up there. I will try this. Actually, this. Okay. All right. Do you see the slides now?
Yep, sure do.
Perfect. All right, yeah. So let's just dive right in. Just wanted to give a quick update. Like Ben said, the official start of our surveillance season is right around the corner. So I just want to give an overview of specifically our laboratory surveillance in the state. Then Amy will cover some specimen submission guidance to NPHL for the upcoming season too. So quickly, just a few announcements before I dive in. Hopefully, a lot of you have saw an email that went out about our annual start of surveillance season call. That will be held here in a couple weeks on Tuesday the 23rd at 10 a.m. Just like last year, it will be recorded and we'll post a copy of the recording both to our website and also email it out. If you did not get this invite, you can go ahead and contact our new DHHS respiratory team email inbox, which I have here copied on the second bullet point. And then just moving forward, for any respiratory disease surveillance questions, concerns you may have, please contact that email. We're going to try to move towards more of a shared email inbox for this season. Um, then again, speaking of the season, the official start date for the 25-26 surveillance season is going to fall on Saturday, October 4th of 2025. So that's MMWR week 40 to those familiar with MMWR week. So just like every year, they start on week 40. So yeah, we're just under 2 months, or like under 1 month actually. So I won't go through all of these here, but these are all just the various surveillance systems that we utilize here at DHHS to kind of show respiratory disease activity across the state. So, of course, today we'll be focused on laboratory surveillance, both our electronic laboratory reporting and our weekly flu lab survey that gets completed for those labs who aren't enrolled in ELR. So, firstly, quick on those non-ELR labs. So they complete on a weekly basis a survey that captures data both on just influenza and RSV positive tests and test performs. We have worked on adding COVID-19 to that survey as well. Just haven't quite gotten that accomplished yet, but hope to hopefully soon. And then and that 25 number actually should be a little bit less. That was a number at the start of last respiratory season, and I know there's a handful of labs since then have onboarded to ELR, um, which is great. And I don't have an exact number of those number of ELR labs, but I know it's over 150. I believe as of last year that submit influenza electronic labs daily to us. For our rules and regs, influenza positives and negative tests are reportable for those laboratories who are enrolled in ELR. Now, Amy will touch on this a little bit too later, but just briefly, we do have what we call Sentinel laboratories every year. We try to select one per local health department, and that's just based on the highest reporting flu testing volume during the previous surveillance season. And we asked and partner with the Sentinel laboratories, providing them 10 collection kits to be used throughout the upcoming season. And those tests get ordered through NPHL's ordering system of NewAlert, specifically the NCO4 test code, again, which we'll touch on more later here soon. And each of these specimens that get submitted not only get tested for influenza A and B, but now, starting last year, actually, are also tested for RSV and SARS-CoV-2 routinely. And then if it's influenza positive, it'll go ahead and get subtype for AB. And then if it's A, it'll get further subtype to either H1 or H3. I'm going to skip that last bullet because I think Amy will touch on that. So I don't think in the past I've mentioned too much about our NERS reporting, so I just wanted threw a slide together to kind of explain what that is. So it's a CDC surveillance system. It stands for the National Respiratory and Enteric Virus Surveillance System, or just NERS for short. And it's a weekly reporting system where it collects data on positive tests and total tests, both on PCR and antigen tests for a number of respiratory and enteric pathogens that I listed here. Basically, it's pathogens that are commonly found on respiratory or enteric panels. So how we identify labs to participate is using that ELR data. We try to find labs who run and report their respiratory and or enteric panels via ELR, and then reach out to them. And with their permission, we are able to report on their behalf weekly directly to the CDC's NERVS team. And currently, we actually have 36 labs in Nebraska that are participating, which is quite a bit. And I don't know who the top state is for number of enrolled labs, but I know we're up there. So that's pretty neat. And then this data is included in several areas publicly, both at the federal level and here at the state. So CDC does have a NERVS dashboard that showcases this data just as a state as a whole. I included a link there, and also included some links to data where we show this on our DHHS web pages, both in a respiratory disease PDF report, as well as our respiratory illness, or excuse me, not the respiratory illness dashboard yet, but I wanted to throw that link in there too, just to highlight that. This NERVS data is found in the PDF report, not quite the dashboard yet. I want to clarify that, but a lot of overlapping data between those two. Just to give users different ways to look at this data based on their preferences. All right, then quickly here, finally wanted to touch on the importance of novel influenza surveillance. So it's also obviously very crucial and necessary to have strong laboratory surveillance to accomplish this, to be able to put ourselves in position to detect novel and variant influenza. In fact, over the past almost 2 years now, in response to the H5N1 outbreaks both in poultry and dairy cattle, there has been a handful of human influenza H5 cases that were detected through routine surveillance, rather than a majority of them who were detected through like active monitoring after learning of a positive dairy cattle herd, for example. So it just heightens and highlights the importance of having strong laboratory surveillance to be able to put ourselves in positions to detect these. So just really want to emphasize, and I know I've said this a lot, and we've shared this message on this call in the past, and we'll continue to do so. But if your lab ever gets an unsubtypable influenza A positive specimen, please contact us, your local health department, so we can coordinate amongst all of us in NPHL to get some subtyping done at the public health lab. All right, with that, I just wanted to share some data figures from our past surveillance season and include a little bit of updated data as well. All of these data figures, except for one, I threw a bonus figure in there, are included in our public reports. So what we're looking at here is influenza laboratory data showing influenza A in light blue and B in dark blue positive tests overlaid with overall influenza test positivity there in red. So this past season, we observed a pretty high season and high activity levels of flu, which was a lot of the states saw. So here in Nebraska specifically, though, we peaked out in about mid or early to mid February. And then diving a little bit deeper into some subtypes. So what we're looking at here is the proportion of influenza A subtypes by week. So moving left to right, left is of the start of last season, so October 24, all the way through about the end of May to the far right. In light blue, that is influenza A H3, and dark blue is influenza A H1. So for the first half of the season, we really saw influenza A H3 predominate. So roughly 2/3, 3/4 of the weekly subtypes being that H3. And then the latter half of the flu season, really when we saw flu peak there in early mid-February, we saw a transition to influenza A H1. This wasn't unique to Nebraska. A lot of states kind of saw this mixed bag of influenza A H1s, H3s. But it was interesting to see that transition. So I wanted to show that here. Again, we're sticking with influenza. What we're looking at here is some historical data, specifically influenza A percent positivity there at the top, and at the bottom is influenza B test positivity. To show kind of historically how last season stacked up to the previous three. So last season is in red here in the 24-25. So saw a similar peak for influenza A that we did in 22-23. Overall, when you account influenza B in there, pretty similar levels last year. But really, since the COVID-19 pandemic started back in 2020, outside of last surveillance season, or two, I should say, two surveillance seasons ago, 23-24, haven't seen much influenza B. So that's something that we'll continue to keep an eye on. All right, I'm shifting bugs here to RSV. Has had one slide of some surveillance data. Again, we're looking at test positivity for RSV for the past few years. So we've slowly seen a kind of shift in when we see peak activity in RSV since the COVID-19 pandemic. Last year in purple, in the 23-24 season, we kind of saw that peak right in December. This past year in red, the 24-25, that peak kind of fell back a couple months to roughly late February, early March. So kind of both are times when we would expect to see a peak. So I imagine this year we'll see something in that time frame, but of course, only time will tell. All right, shifting again now to SARS-CoV-2, and I just actually updated this figure this morning. As you can see on the far right, week ending 9/6, this past week, we've over the last couple months, I've started to see increases in SARS-CoV-2 activity. In purple is showing this the total number of tests by week, and then that black line is overlaid with percent positivity. One important note is the past 2 weeks, we've actually started to see a decrease in test positivity. And just this past week, for the first time, also saw that in our test positives. Probably still a little too early to call that our peak for the SARS-CoV-2 for this summer wave, but is encouraging to see that trend downwards. And to go a little bit further, putting this in some historical context, this figure here is showing the percent positivity for SARS-CoV-2 over the past few seasons. Again, in red is where we're currently at on this right side. In the previous two surveillance seasons, both the 23-24 and 22-23, we peaked roughly almost exactly this time of year that we observed here for the 24-25 season. And also after that peak started to see that steady decline. So that leaves me a little more optimism that perhaps we peaked. We'll like to see this data come next week and see it continue that trend to feel a little more strongly about that. But again, is encouraging to see that downward trend. All right, just have a couple more slides now. Since I mentioned NERS reporting earlier, I thought it'd be cool to show some of that data that gets reported to CDC's NERVS team. So I know this is a busy slide, but here we have just the number of just respiratory pathogens that get reported to NERVS, dating all the way back to the 21-22 season. We're just looking at total number of positive tests here. The very far right is actually updated this about an hour before I hopped on this call, but does include data for week ending the 6th of September, that very, very far right data point. And as you can see, and as we have seen at this time of year, as we see a pretty big wave of rhino and enteroviruses, I don't think it's any coincidence that that occurs right shortly after school gets started. So I'm sure that's a driving force in that. But we're also starting to see a little bit of an uptick, in this green line here, which is para-influenza viruses. And then on that note, specifically for para-influenza virus, we also include a data figure breaking those para-influenza viruses 1 through 4 out, as well as seasonal coronaviruses, so not including SARS-CoV-2. But this is a pretty cool data figure, I think, just showing how cyclical maybe is a good word, or how seasonal some of these specific para-influenza viruses are. It's like almost clockwork. Every year, specifically for like para-influenza 3, that's this darker shade of green. It always seems to peak in the springtime. And also about this time of year, we tend to see a little bit of para-influenza 1 and 2, and we're kind of starting to see that already. So it's just cool seeing how the surveillance data looks over time and kind of follows trends moving forward. All right, and finally, to kind of wrap up my portion of this presentation, I wanted to quickly touch on activity in the southern hemisphere. So we tend to keep an eye on what's going on in the southern hemisphere, and just to give us maybe some insights what we could expect here in the northern hemisphere for our upcoming flu season. It's never a slam dunk. But overall, in the southern hemisphere, according to WHO, influenza activity was considered moderate to high, with most areas seeing influenza A. Some countries, as I know, Australia is being one of them, had reported some influenza B activity. The predominant influenza strains so far have varied across regions. South America seems to have reported predominantly AH1, African countries AH3, and kind of the Asia Oceania region had a little bit of both. And as of at least August 2025, it seems like most countries in the southern hemisphere are reporting low activity or decrease in activity, but still a few that are seeing increases, specifically the Oceania area. And then currently here in the northern hemisphere, including the United States and us here in Nebraska, we're not seeing much flu activity just quite yet. It's been relatively stable. So that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. But if you have any questions, happy to take those maybe after Amy's presentation. But I can also keep an eye on the chat. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Derek. Amy, I do believe you should be able to share your screen if you're ready to go.
Okay.
Yep, we could see that.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Amy Roden. I'm one of the technologists here at the Nebraska Public Health Lab, and I just wanted to touch on what labs need to do when submitting specimens to us, what type of specimens are able to be submitted, and just do a quick overview of kind of what happens behind the scenes here at NPHL once we receive the specimens. So here you can see there's kind of two pathways you can do when submitting specimens, and it kind of depends on whether or not you need results back or if you just are submitting specimens to us for our surveillance purposes. So if you are submitting specimens to us and need results, you are going to go ahead and order the NCO 4 in NULERT. So a lot of labs that would do that, or if you need confirmation for influenza antigen testing or just confirmation in general, if you're one of the Sentinel sites that receive the 10 collection kits from DHHS, you will also order NCO 4. The results you will see coming back to you are real-time PCR results for the SARS-CoV-2, influenza A and B, and RSV, as well as any influenza A positives will get further subtypes, and you will get either the AH3 or H1N1 subtype reports. If you don't need a result and are you just submitting them for surveillance purposes, if you're running a Cepheid real-time PCR and just want to submit them to us. You don't have to place an order. You just need to throw the specimens in a bag and submit them to us. You can batch them even. You don't have to submit them as they come up positive. We just ask you to submit at least one time per week. If you are submitting to us, they're going to come as a category B, and make sure you have at least 2 patient identifiers on these specimens. If you have the previous lab results, we would also like to see those with the specimens as well, including CTs, just to save some redundancy in workflow. The next slide here just shows the approved sample sources for the respiratory testing. You can also find these on our test directory at Nebraska, nphl.org. And finally, what happens to the specimens here at NPHL? So we do perform the initial real-time PCR screening. That's the NCOV4 order for SARS-CoV-2, influenza A and B, and RSV. And depending on what comes up with those, we have different sub-workflows. So as I said earlier, the influenza A positives do get further subtyped to H3 or H1N1. Influenza B doesn't get subtyped any further, but both influenza A and B PCR positives are submitted to one of our national influenza reference centers. So usually this is just another public health lab that has been, that the CDC has selected to perform this the secondary testing on the positives. You can see here they do the virus isolation and propagation. They do testing on antiviral resistance. And they also perform next generation sequencing on these isolates. And this is kind of used for vaccine development and just to see what's going on and what's circulating throughout the United States. Any specimens that are SARS-CoV-2 positive, we do reflex to whole genome sequencing here at NPHL. That is just to see kind of what lineages are circulating, and that gets reported to the epidemiologists here at Nebraska. Any specimens that are RSV positive, as of now, we're banking, and hopefully we'll have some future developments that we can use those for. So that's just kind of my overview for what's going on for this respiratory season.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amy. Does anyone have any questions for Derek or Amy about respiratory season or specimen submission? Okay. If anything pops up, you can throw it in the chat or reach out. Okay, so next on the agenda, I just want to mention real quick some slight changes to our see if I can share my screen. There we go. Some slight changes to our CRE testing algorithm here. I guess it'd be submission. This is more on the submission side. What I'd really like to point out is up here under the submission criteria, what has changed is for our Pseudomonas aeruginosa. We've kind of expanded the submission criteria a little bit. And so I just want to run over this real quick. If you're a laboratory who's running ASTs on a Pseudomonas aeruginosa and you report both cefepime and ceftazidime, we would like you to submit isolates that are resistant to both of those antibiotics if you're reporting them. So if it's susceptible to one or the other, no submission necessary. We want to resist non-susceptible to both. Or if you report either cefepime or ceftazidime and you see a non-susceptible result for whichever drug you're reporting, we would like you to submit those isolates. I know there were materials sent out about this, but I just kind of wanted to go over it real quick. Is there any questions about that? And if you do have any questions or if you ever need clarification on an isolate, feel free to reach out to me too. I'm available. And then the last thing for our laboratory topics here, just wanted to mention we received a notice on Thursday that there is a outbreak of Ebola virus disease in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. 28 suspected cases with 15 deaths. 4 of them are health workers. We wanted to mention this. If you have a highly hazardous communicable disease response plan or preparation plan, it might be a good idea just to dust those off. I think the World Health Organization is sending some folks over there to investigate. So we just wanted to mention that while we had everyone here in the same room. And so without further ado, we can go ahead and move on to our section updates. Starting at the top with our hospital acquired illness team, I think Dr. Ashraf is here to give the updates for that.
Thank you, Ben. So for HAI team, the big thing that we are still dealing with right now is Candida auris. Candida auris, as you guys have probably remember from previous conversation that we had about 3 different clusters identified this year, 3 separate cluster, one clade 1, one clade 2, and sorry, one clade 1, one clade 3, and one clade 4. So, so clade 1 and clade 3 cluster appears to be contained. However, the clade 4 cluster appears to still be out there, and we are seeing some more cases. Now we're not sure whether there is, 2 different introduction of clade 4 or the same introduction giving more cases. But I think for us, importantly, to note here is just to be aware that we are seeing cases of Candida auris in the state. And if you have a specimen that is concerning and there is a potential for misidentification, or if you have a sterile site sample that is showing Candida growth, but you cannot further further identify which species it is, please send that specimen. Either if you are worried about misidentification, or if you are concerned about that you cannot identify the species, do send that to NPHL. Other than that, the CPCRE increase that we have been seeing in the state, we were able to narrow down a source of that, and since then, we have worked on that source, and it appears that we are seeing some benefits, and the numbers that we were seeing, a rapid increase of CPCRE actually have now the incidents have gone down a little in the last few months. So we may have kind of controlled that that issue. So that's basically the update from the HAI. I'll open up for question if somebody has some.
This is Lacey. We do have a new HAI epi starting this
Oh,
week.
yeah?
I don't know if you wanted to announce that, Dr. Ashraf.
Well, we can do. I don't think she will be on the call today because she's in orientation, but that's a good point to remind me of that. So Claire is actually not unknown to this group. She was in foodborne epi for the state, and she is now joining the HAI team for HAI epi position. So we welcome her to our group, and I think she probably will be here the next time we have this meeting. So we'll do another introduction at that time too. But Claire I'm not going to try to. How do you pronounce her last name? Ortlip? Thank you, Robin. Ortlieb. So Claire Ortlieb is going to be here starting next meeting, hopefully. Thank you, Lacey, for reminding.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Dr. Ashraf. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Derek, did you have anything to add for respiratory illness?
Nope, I think we're good. But again, happy to take questions if any have any in the chat. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Derek. We'll go to enteric outbreaks. Is Sandra on to cover enteric outbreaks?
Sure.
Okay,
So,
great.
yes, so the cyclospora cases seem to be slowing down, and the CDC is closing our 2 cyclospora clusters that were open last month. So that is coming to an end. We are also currently a part of multiple multi-state salmonella outbreaks. The initial shell eggs outbreak has closed, but another shell egg, unrelated. This one is with kind of golden yolks, is a type of egg brand. There's a salmonella multi-state outbreak associated to that. The backyard poultry is also still ongoing, as well as we have recently added to another multi-state outbreak, was a source unknown for salmonella last week. So this is just a reminder to the labs to make sure you send in your salmonella specimens into MPHL. And that's all the updates we have today.
Thank you, Sandra. Give a second for any questions. Okay, we'll go on to vector-borne disease. Jeff Hammock.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Just a couple things here. Right now it's West Nile virus season. We're starting to see, our human cases come in. We've definitely had a lot of mosquito samples testing positive out there. So one thing I would just maybe, remind folks is, especially if providers are ordering labs, is we've had a couple of instances where we've had individuals that were tested for tick-borne diseases, but those were negative, but weren't tested for West Nile virus, but had very similar symptoms to what I would expect for West Nile virus and or a tick-borne disease. So might be just one thing to, providers are ordering and you're just seeing like, hey, this time of year, they're just ordering a tick-borne panel or something like that, or something for tick-borne diseases. They should maybe also think about ordering for West Nile virus because it's that time of year. The other thing then I just wanted to briefly touch on was if there's any requests for testing for, things, something like Jamestown Canyon virus, which we've had a couple folks reach out to us about. There isn't you won't find a specific Jamestown Canyon virus test, if you're going through your commercial reference lab. It's going to be something called either California virus or California encephalitis virus. Depending on which commercial lab you go through, you might be able to order that individually, or if you may have to get the arboviral panel to find it on there. But either way, it's going to say something like California encephalitis virus or California virus. That's just a very general term. It's not necessarily specific to California virus, California encephalitis virus. It's more of a screening type test. And so if we would ever have a positive hit on that, we try to reach out, maybe get that sample sent back to the folks here at MPHL so we could get that sent down to CDC so they could do some neutralization testing on that to figure out what species of virus that might be, just because that group can cross-react on these kind of general serology tests that are available at the commercial lab. So those are kind of the big things I wanted to touch upon mainly there. But, we'll keep going through, West Nile virus, it's kind of like I said, the main time of year. We'll keep doing our mosquito surveillance through the end of September and wrap that up at the end of September. Generally, we start to see our cases kind of come down here at the latter half of September and in through October as we get cooler weather that comes in. So, but those are my updates.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Okay. Kristen told me that she might not be able to make it today. I don't I don't think she's on here, but she had previously let me know that there's no updates for the TB program for this meeting. Is Tammy on for the STD program?
This is Dennis Lashinsky.
Oh, hey,
I can give
Dennis.
a update. Probably the biggest update for STI is after several years of seeing an increase with syphilis, we're currently running well below our numbers for the last few years, probably about 30 to 40% below to this point. And also seeing a decrease in congenital syphilis.
That's great news.
So yeah, this is the first time in about 7 years that we're seeing a decrease. So
Great. Thanks, Dennis. And then we finish with lead testing. Darion, do you have an update about leads?
Sorry about that. I had a hard time unmuting. It's Sandra.
Oh,
We
hey.
currently don't have any updates for lead today.
Great. So then to close this out here, just some of the training we have going on at NPHL. Our 2 wet workshops are less than and just about a month away. We've got just a couple of spots left in each workshop. We have to limit the number of attendees so we can kind of maximize our PACE credits that we're able to give out. So if you have somebody who's interested or needs to attend those, you can check out the registration, and then we will we'll start preparing our fall challenge sets and our fall gram stain challenges kind of around the same time as the wet workshop. So look forward to those if you're a regular participant. And then next month's meeting, it's going to be on Tuesday, October 14th, because there is a holiday on the 13th. So we're backing it up by a day. And that's everything. If there's no more questions or comments, we can let the laboratorians go.
This is Allison. I just want to point out that Jacob is our new VPD epidemiologist.
I think he's on. I think I saw him on here if he just wants to say hi. Not to throw you on the spot.
No, it's all good. Hey everyone, yes, I'm the new vaccine and preventable disease epidemiologist at DHHS. I just started about 2 weeks ago, but excited to get into everything. So
welcome. Okay, so yeah, I believe that's it for today. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to Derek and Amy for giving us some updates and some information. That'll do it.